Well, motivation can also be compared to being interested, right?
Sure.
Like how I've been interested in a lot of different topics. And you should see my repertoire of books, my library of books that I've never even opened because the topic was never a priority and probably just kind of a fleeting interest. Okay. But discipline is more of the commitment side of things. Like, so if we use the gym, and a lot of people, this is like the easiest way for me to at least understand it, is that motivation is I can look in the mirror and see my belly going over my belt. I'm like, you know what? I'm motivated to go back to the gym. Like, I don't like the way that looks on me. Then there's been plenty of times in my life where I decided to start going and I went for a few days. I was highly motivated. And then with the lack of discipline, I stopped going, right? Like, there's no consistency with motivation. Whereas discipline is like, you know what? Yes, there's a motivation behind this because there's a result that I want to get. But motivation does not get you over to the gym consistently. It gets you there a few times, maybe, but discipline is that active choice and habits that you form, the lifestyle that you choose that is going to be able to get those results, especially when you're thinking long-term, big picture items.
So what are the secrets? How do some of the most successful entrepreneurs find the freedom that we all got into business for in the first place? How did they find the time, energy, and resources to launch and scale strong? And how do entrepreneurs like us align our time, money, and energy in a way that will allow us to reach what we set out to achieve? These are the key questions, and this community will give you the answers. Welcome to the Prosperity Movement.
Welcome, everybody, to the Prosperity U podcast. This is where the leadership team of the Prosperity Movement, we like to get together, talk about certain concepts and principles, things that will help people grow their wealth, you have more efficiencies with their time, with their health, with their relationships. We kind of cover those four topics, not necessarily in that order. And we like to have discussions about them. And sometimes we do not agree. And that is totally okay. So I want to go over our mission, vision, values real quick. So our mission is to impact the world by bringing life-giving principles of prosperity to it. Our vision is to guide our community to back engineer their full power and potential with purpose-driven growth so they can do more of the things they love with the people they love most. And our values, the three I's, impact, integrity, and intentionality. Impact, in order to impact the world, we value time, health, relationships, and legacy relentlessly at the highest level. Integrity, we value people over profits, and we are driven and dedicated to the success of our community. And then finally, intentionality, we provide result-oriented support through mentorship to ignite an inspired and focused community. So
in Galatians 5:22-26, in the fruit of the Spirit, amen. Hey.
So the topic today that I thought was an interesting suggestion from our extended team here is the difference between motivation and discipline. And so I found that to be a pretty interesting little topic.
Good one.
What are your thoughts, Travis? Start us off.
Well, in our blueprint, we do talk about that a little bit, brush over it. The way that I like to at least start it is differentiating momentum versus motivation. Okay, because the idea behind momentum is that things in motion tend to stay in motion, right? Unless a force acts on them, blah blah blah. We went to school, right? But motivation to me is like that thing that kind of gets you going in the first place. And so discipline, as at least I define these things and to separate them, is different from motivation by the fact that it's not something that maybe is like a passion, but it's a choice, an active going, right? And the idea that I'm trying to piece together with these two different topics is that if you have your momentum already built up, it's a heck of a lot harder to stop you. Like, have you ever been working on something and you just get into the zone and then all of a sudden you glonk out and all of a sudden you realize it's like 10 o'clock at night? Like, oh my gosh, where did the time go? And that did not take motivation, right? And maybe it doesn't even take the discipline to get there, but that was the byproduct of being in a momentous state, right? And so discipline itself, if you just want to go to the nitty gritty, discipline is the decision to do something, the thought process behind it. Motivation is kind of like more attached to the side of feelings of like enjoying it or such, right? I mean, I don't feel like I'm doing a really good job of describing these things. So help me real quick.
Well,
I think it's almost like the difference between like when you think of momentum and traction. Right? That's one that we learned about is like momentum is something that is up and down and up and down. That in this case, when you're talking about discipline, we're talking feelings. Some people let their feelings get in the way. Rather, those that don't let their feelings get in the way, they're gonna see constant traction, constant up movement. Now, it might not be as manic or bipolar, you know what I mean? Or it might be just more honed in and focused and consistent in an upward trajectory. Some might say patient and persistent.
Nice. Yeah, 100%. Well, I do really like both of those and how discipline is a decision. I like that. I think there's definitely a thing there. I also feel like if you refer to a task and you're saying you need discipline to do said task. Let's say, for example, going to the gym. We're bringing this really early into this conversation, but
oh, jeez, here we go.
Isn't it perfect?
Here we go. You ready?
But if you do any task such as that, and you say it takes discipline to accomplish a task, to me, I feel like every one of those decisions, it's always kind of a rough start, but once you get going, you just feel so wonderful, right? It's almost like motivation is almost a byproduct of discipline.
Mm-hmm. Well, motivation can also be compared to being interested, right? Sure. Like I've been interested in a lot of different topics, and you should see my repertoire of books, my library of books that I've never even opened because the topic was never a priority and probably just kind of a fleeting interest. Okay. But discipline is more of the commitment side of things. Like, so if we use the gym, and a lot of people, this is like the easiest way for me to at least understand it, is that motivation is I can look in the mirror and see my belly going over my belt and be like, you know what, I'm motivated to go back to the gym. Like, I don't like the way that looks on me. And then there's been plenty of times in my life where I decided to start going, and I went for a few days. I was highly motivated. And then with the lack of discipline, I stopped going, right? Like, there's no consistency with motivation. Whereas discipline is like, you know what? Yes, there is a motivation behind this because there's a result that I want to get. But motivation does not get you over to the gym consistently. It gets you there a few times, maybe, but discipline is that active choice and habits that you form, the lifestyle that you choose that is going to be able to get those results, especially when you're thinking long-term, big picture items. Like in my case, I wanted to lose quite a bit of weight. I'm down 16 pounds, guys. 198.8 today.
I'm putting on the muscle. Yeah, so like motivation, I feel like the difference between motivation and inspiration, if you will, is the difference between what do you do for work and what are you working on. So like one is a very uninspired question because over 90% of people can tell you what they do for work, but they can't tell you why because they don't like it. Most people don't even like what they do for work. But when you ask somebody, what are you working on? They're going to first start with what they're most passionate about. Right. So do I want to figure out what's motivating me? So for example, if all that's motivating you is a 6-pack abs on a daily basis to not eat what's in the cupboard, those cookies or those chocolate bars or that kind of stuff, that's different than the inspiration of I want to be in the best shape of my life to make my wife go, woo, to make my kids go, yay. You know, like that's the inspiration. That's the inspiration. Do you want the motivation or do you want the inspiration? The surface value or the internal value?
And the thing about inspiration too is it's gonna give you that focus on the days that you don't want to. So motivation's so darn temporary, you know. But inspiration, it's like, man, I'm tired. I had a long day. I had a rough day. I still haven't hit the gym yet. I got to go. Right. And you're now inspired to take action even when it's hard.
Yeah. So I like have fun with it because it's like, man, like what's my inspiration? What's the impact? Do you know with intention what you want to accomplish by the time you're not here anymore? Do you know?
I love that topic because I just had a realization the other day with the ever growing list of things that I want to accomplish in life. It is making me more and more aware of my mortality because it's becoming less and less like, man, I wish I had an extra 100 years to be able to really go and do this with excellence. Because I don't know about you guys. Actually, no, I do know you guys. I don't know about everyone listening though. I don't like to do things, and these guys don't like to do things without doing it for the purpose of excellence, right? You don't half-ass 10 things, you whole ass one thing. Pardon my language.
But no, I whole ass 10 at a time.
That's
who said you can't do it all. God is on the move.
Yeah. Well, one thing to note about motivation versus discipline is that motivation I get from listening to podcasts. I love listening to other people talk and share their opinions, their insights, their experience, right? But I am not always disciplined to listen to those podcasts, right? And so it's actually a part of my morning routine that I kind of, I do multiple things at once. And when it comes to actively listening and getting something from again, listening to somebody else, I can't be doing anything crazy, right? I have to be focused. And so I might be doing it during my workout, but usually I'm just stretching and getting my pliability up. And so I'll listen to my podcast for, 45 minutes and really get a little bit more limber in the morning. But if I'm distracted doing something else, it goes in one ear and out the other, right? So I personally really have to listen. I'm not a good multitasker. But the motivation that I get from the podcast really pushes me for the rest of the day. I'm like, man, I want what that person has, or I like what that person said. I want to apply it, et cetera, et cetera. But to get to that motivation takes discipline to actually sit down and listen to a podcast, because I promise you, I would much rather play a game on my phone or watch a movie or do anything else that's lazy and non-productive, right? Like that's where humans work. That's human nature, is to be in a state of conserving energy, right? So anyways, motivation, it can come from different sources, but typically, at least for me, the motivation I get comes from the discipline that happens first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
It's but again, getting back to that. Oh, go ahead, Zach. You go.
What I was saying is, it's kind of like it's a positive stair climb, right? It's like when you do something that takes discipline and you get a result, you feel a little bit more motivated, and then in turn it kind of gives you more discipline to do something else productive to get another result, and then you're on this positive upswing, versus where most people sit, which is more of a negative spiral,
right? Mm-hmm.
And that comes from motivation only, where there's not discipline or inspiration involved, and that's where you have little temporary spikes, but then you're like, you just feel down, and then
this is what I mean by intention. Do you understand what you want to achieve by the time you're not here anymore?
Right.
If you do not understand what that means to you, I promise you, you will go through depression, anxiety. You will deal with you'll have nothing but problems. But hey, guess what? We're guaranteed trials in life. That's a biblical truth. You're guaranteed trials. But what's the difference between a trial and a problem? Right? You live in a problem, or you have a trial to be tested, and you can live in victory. Which one do you want? So if I live intentionally and know that this is what I want to accomplish by the end of my life, I can now look at today and decide how I am going to distribute my time, money, and my energy effectively, efficiently, and with absolute impact.
I think you said something really profound right there that I don't want to skip over too much, which is the idea that a lack of vision is oftentimes
death,
the culprit for hopelessness that leads to all these rampant mental health issues that we have, like depression and anxiety and stuff. And I think it's contributed mostly to especially in the North American cultures that we have here in the States and Canada. We have been raised to separate. As soon as you turn 18, you move out of the house, you get your own car, right? You get your own house, your own space, and you move to different states altogether or different cities. We're losing that connection, and is being replaced with the idea that you go to work, you work your butt off, and you retire in 40 years kind of thing. And you get the American dream, a white picket fence and your own car and a big flat screen TV and all this crap that is causing depression because there's no vision with it anymore. It's no intentionality. It's just plugging into the matrix, really. And I think at the very least, somebody should have, how do I say this? I don't want to make blanket statements too much. So I'll digress. I'll go back. A lack of vision, a lack of intentionality, I believe is equal to a lack of hope. And if you're hopeless. Or if you're hopeless, then what does that do for you, right? Does that make sense?
Biblical
100%.
truth in what we read in the Holy Scriptures literally says, man without vision dies. It is death. Okay. So if you do not have intentionality in your life, you're not clear on what your mission, your vision, your value focus is. If you are not clear on what you're here for, if you are not clear, and don't get it twisted. You have a divine purpose. Another biblical truth is that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, unique in a vision, in the image of God, an image bearer. Whether or not you believe in God or what have you, you are made in his image. So I'm not here to debate those things. Okay. but reality is that you are an image bearer, made fearfully and wonderfully made, unique in a vision. Now, what is fearfully made in that context? Fearfully means with great reverence, great respect. So then the next question that I have at this point is, and when we look, okay, without going too far into, like, I just like going into the biblical heart and mindset, because in the book of Exodus, there's this term that God reveals himself as I am. And we hear this guy, Henry Ford, say, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are correct. You are right. And we're going to listen to that guy. But let's listen to the fact that I am is genuinely the most powerful thing that you can ever say, because anything you put after it becomes true. I was just on a call today with a guy, and he disqualified himself because he couldn't commit to a call because he wasn't sure about the fact that we have a $100 cancellation fee, and he wasn't sure if something would come up, whether or not. And I was like, okay, but let's get back to the commitment. Tell me about your commitment level. Did you say you're committed? He said, yes, I'm committed. But how you use, but I said, permission to put a coaching hat on right here. Is everybody okay with Brian putting on a coaching hat for a second with the way that you use but?
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. So
yes,
my life,
yes, but I'm just kidding.
my life changed when I figured this out. Okay. So basically how you utilize the word but is how everything can shift and change for you.
Are we talking about B-U-T or B-U-T-T?
You're being a butt. If you're being a butt, if you use butt in this context, you're being a butt, and we don't want to be the butt. We sit on our butts, and we definitely don't want our butts in our mouth. So here's the deal. How you use the butt is really important. But the deal is here, this guy was like, this butt, right? So I had to explain to him, do you realize that the moment you utilize the word but, you threw away everything you just said, and the last thing you said is what becomes true for you. So let me give you an example. I love you, but prom.
I love you unconditionally, but insert condition.
Yeah. Instead of, oh man, I'm frustrated, but I love you. Or here's a really good one. Instead of using but, you can say and, because they can be both. Hey, I love you so much, and I'm super frustrated with you right now. You know what I mean?
Do both. Yeah, definitely.
They can coincide. They can go together. It's okay. But be careful how you use but. You have no idea how much you're throwing your life down the drain with how you use but. and how you use I am. How many people on this call or anybody that you know are constantly like, here's the thing that really, really hit me as I was going through some leadership training recently, because I'm always refining and always just really, getting into the definition of who I am and defining, being in true definition. But like, oh man, it really, really hit me to understand that how you define yourself and how you talk to yourself, most people are so incredibly hard on themselves. You would never, ever treat your loved one the way you treat yourself. You would never, ever. So there's this thing where people think they're being humble, but there's also such a thing called false humility. There's a thing called false humility. So yes, we are called to be humble, but false humility is also a sin. Okay? So there's this Proverbs 28:1 thing that says you are to walk in boldness, right? There's nothing wrong with you walking in and being like, we were just talking about this the other day, pride, right? Pride is an ugly, ugly deal, but there are different types of pride, right? I think you should have a certain layer of proper pride in the vision of that God has in you and how he sees you, right? Because if you only knew how he saw you and you started acting in accordance with that, look out.
Yeah.
Anyways, I digress. I'll let you guys take it away from here.
And on that notion, though, there's tons of times that you can be thinking, let's say cussing, for example. I've been a sailor my whole life, apparently, and I've really, over the past few months, and Brian has as well. Zach's an angel, a little sweetheart angel with a halo over his head. Never says a bad word. He says crap and then apologizes. He's such a sweetheart. But Brian and I are sailors, cut from the same cloth, and we're trying to cut back how much we're using profanity.
That's the back
there's
end.
A motivation.
That's the back end boardroom talk.
Right. There's a motivation behind it with like during church, right? When we're actually there, or maybe when you're reading the Bible and such. And it's super easy to be reading this in the moment and be motivated, but it takes the discipline for it to be a long-term effect to do it. And I'll give you an example. I went to this event in Utah a few weeks ago, and the guy that I went, he does cuss often. And it rubbed off on me. And by the time I got home, I was swearing left and right. And I realized that I was even doing it with my wife, like in front of her. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so quick how you can change, right? With that little bit of motivation. And motivation does not have to be necessarily a good thing or trying to get you to do a good thing. You could be motivated to do bad, right? And so that little bit of motivation can trick you temporarily, but that discipline comes through and says in the back of the mind and the heart, right? And if you're like us, when you believe in Christ, then there's a Holy Spirit in you that's also saying, hey, I'm going to give you some discipline. I'm going to put my coaching hat on with you and tell you, hey, this is something that you're motivated in the wrong direction. Get back on the right course, right? So, yes, go ahead, Brian. You got something?
No, I'm in agreement with you fully.
Yeah.
So I like if we go back to the concept of a vision. One thing that I see people kind of fall into a trap of, and I think the book Living Forward is just a fantastic resource to learn more about setting your own vision. And the first thing that it does is it has you start at your funeral. What are people saying about you at your funeral? And that's very eye-opening because, see, most people, we have these 3 phases here in Prosperity Movement. It's, to put it really simply, thank you. Yes, Living Forward. Great book. Put it simply, the 3 phases is cash flow, growth, diversification. Okay, I'm not going to dive into the details, but what I will tell you is that most of the time, if we ask somebody, what are your goals? What are your, what's your vision for yourself, for your family? Typically, it ends at cash flow. It's like people have these blinders on, and all they can really focus on is immediate lifestyle, which is cash flow. Cash flow is your expenses and how often you go out to eat with your family and those kinds of one family vacation a year, those kinds of things. That's cash flow, right?
Which it's not really. I don't think it's really people's fault that those blinders are on. Because I mean, if we just look at like 2000 versus 2024, 80 grand roughly, which like right now is considered still considered a pretty good wage, right? 80 grand in 2000, you would have to get the same impact and let your dollars go the same amount, the same direction, right? You would have to make $250,000 roughly a year to get the same out of that, because inflation of especially the housing market and utilities and food, right?
Yeah.
And so the people are, aspiring to increase their income, their cash flow and such. And as they're going up, well, inflation's counteracting them. And
Right.
so it's like, man, I just need to get it up. I need to get it up, but they're still going down year over year. Even if the income is going up, inflation's eating all of that away. And so for just about everybody who's not really bolstering in multiple areas of intentionality, then they're fighting an uphill, downhill battle. It's so bizarre. And so I don't blame them to have those blinders on. But the truth of the matter that you're talking about is that they don't have to be. And we can start being creative.
I would go ahead and say that it's more effective to focus on your life impact. And actually the cash flow side becomes a byproduct of your vision.
Come on.
And so when people are focused, they're so focused on this one thing. And typically when they are focused on it, they're focused on it in a negative light, right? So they say something like, I need more money, or I'm lacking
neediness.
I'm lacking money.
Nobody likes that.
Yeah, it's got a
money doesn't like that either.
Yeah.
Not a happy pocket full of money there. Nope.
Right. But if you do focus on your vision, and you focus on what you want to leave behind for legacy, all of a sudden the decisions you're making today for cash flow are significantly different. And your perspective today on money is significantly different in a good way.
And all of a sudden, your attractor factor goes through the roof. And here's what I mean by that. So now I'm intentional what I want to achieve by the time I'm gone. And maybe I want to go further. This book, I'm always looking for ways. Can we go further for a second? Can we go somewhere that most people will never go? Is everybody okay with that? So this book says on your funeral day. What about 10 years after you're gone? What about 50? What about 100? What about 500 years? Can you live with intentionality of what you want to see 500 years, 1,000 years after you're gone? The impact that you left behind? Ooh, now we're having fun, because now your to-do list gets really narrow, but it could be big still. Okay, because let's look. When God's on the move, look out. God will place a vision in your heart, man. The questions that you ask, there's nothing more powerful than the questions you ask. But like, all of a sudden, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, or it becomes revealed to me. Like, because the vision, I know what the vision is. Okay, well, this year for me is really simple. Okay. Registered charity. Like this is like number one for me. That's my personal thing. That's me in my heart. I've been in ministry. We're Men Gone Ministry. Ooh, that's a new podcast. Look out. Stay tuned. Men Gone Ministry. And we're diving deep, deep, deep. And how like, man, people must think that you're crazy. When you start going at it, people must think that that you're operating at a high level when people think you're crazy. But then the people who don't, they must be in alignment with your mission, vision, values. It's not so crazy to them. So now all of a sudden, the people that aren't supposed to be in your life, they shake off. Kind of like Romans 8:28-29. For all those that love me, God is saying, God will be glorified no matter what. The mess is going to turn into a message. Okay, the mess is going to it's going to get messy. That's a promise. You don't go through progress without getting messy, right? Practice makes progress. You don't go without getting messy. It just doesn't happen. You're going to get messy. The mess is going to turn into a message. And brothers and sisters, you will be conformed to the image of the firstborn son. And that means that, again, The flesh is being shaken off, and that includes people that should not be in your life. And boundaries start to become more clear on what those boundaries are supposed to look like, because your vision is so razor focused. And then you got this Proverbs 27:17 thing happening with your buds and all your brothers and sisters. It's a iron sharpens iron. And they're very understanding of your mission, vision, values, because you're understanding of theirs, because you want to feed theirs. And everybody is a cohesive, like, let's go, bro. Let's go, sis. I get it. I see what you want. I see the desire in your heart. Desire, Latin, of the sire, father. You get to choose which one. Guess what? Indecision is a decision. Just saying. Everybody knows there's good and evil in the world. You get to choose. So, do you want to be proactive? Do you want to be active? Or do you want to be disengaged and dead?
Yeah.
I'm alive, but I'm also, it says that we're dead because we're brand new in him. Anyway, you get it.
Now, as far as all everything goes with what you just said, well said. What kind of got placed on my mind here was a confusion that I have with folks. When I first left my job, my boss, I told him what I was up to, and he was like, "Cool, I'll see you in 6 months." Right? Like how that kind of stung a little bit. And then everyone else that I talked to, pretty much everyone else was pretty positive, and they're like, well, if anyone can do it, it can be you, right? Well, there's I don't know about you guys, but I don't see that being a good statement. If anyone can do it, meaning that, like, oh, really unlikely, right? They're basically, Brian, like you're saying, that they're looking at me like I'm crazy. They don't anymore, but it was really perplexing. For me to
especially
think,
when they
like,
tell you they're going to wear a tutu at an event.
when people come through our channels, I got to get this out, or otherwise I'm going to lose this thought. When people come through our channels, or I look, like with the friend that I took over to this event in Utah, he was so afraid to invest in the entry level part, and I was the first one up with my credit card. Like, I want this. I know this is exactly what I want, and I will invest into it. I text my wife first. Don't get me wrong. I said, "Hey, baby, do I have to ask you for permission to buy things over $300 if it's business related? Because we have a personal agreement that if it's $300 or less, she can buy whatever she wants." Or I can buy whatever I want too, right? And so she goes, "No, if it's business, I trust you." And so I bought it. And then like 20 minutes later, she's like, "How much is it, by the way?" And I was like, it was $9,000, and I think it was worth every bit of probably 50 or 60, right? And so I thought it was a really good deal. But what really breaks my heart and for me, like, loses my motivation, is when I talk to other people or see them in even other programs, not just talking about Prosperity Movement, but when they come through and they see something like $9,000 and they're like, "That's too much for me to invest." And in my mind, like, it makes me go back to when I quit my job and I talked to people, like, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but the person I was talking to, I told them, I said, "Hey, after I quit, I got offered a job that was roughly 20 grand a month. And I turned that down to work with Brian and Zach." And like, they think I'm insane. And basically I told them, I said, "Look, I've got 10 grand in cash right now, just about. And I'd rather go and try with this money and then have to go back to work and tuck my tail between my legs than to never try before anyways." Right. And how many people do we talk to or see in Climmer, right, Brian, or where I went on my event? How many people do we see that look at these investments, or they look at it like that's a huge investment? I'm wondering how many of them are on track to actually be able to retire anyways. What does 9 grand mean to them?
They don't even
does
realize...
9 grand make or break their ability to retire? Does 9 grand really make or break their ability to continue to live, especially if there's like finance options and stuff, right? This is what blows my mind, is if you're so unwilling to invest what I think is a pretty nominal investment. Again, I'm referring to the one that I just did. Okay, so 9 grand. Where else are you going to put that? A savings account? You're going to make a couple $100 a year, or you're going to put it into a mutual fund, make maybe a few extra $100 a year. You're going to put it into a house. That's not a down payment for a house. Like, where else could you put that and actually get some pretty big gains? You can't go to college for 9 grand unless you go to one that doesn't matter, right? Like, in my opinion, most colleges pretty much don't matter. Okay, we'll just say it. Unless you're going specifically to be I want my doctors to be really well educated.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something very vocationally specific, then of course those make sense. But for most people, it doesn't. And I don't know. For some reason, I've been talking to quite a few people and getting empty yeses. They're like, "Yeah, I'm committed," and then it reveals itself that they're not. And I'm curious what they really think they're throwing away with an opportunity to either work with us or anybody else, right? I have made so much progress on every single thing that I've invested into, even if it's not exactly what I wanted out of it. Like there is an affiliate program that I purchased, and I'm not an affiliate really. So it's like I didn't actually do what they taught, but it gave me another step in the right direction. I don't know. I'm off my rant. I just, the question I suppose is, does something like that, when you're thinking about legacy and you're trying to increase your cash flow, is that investment really going to make or break your ability to continue?
Skill sets. As soon as you start looking legacy, you're going to hone in on skill sets. When the intentionality behind what your vision and your dream becomes clear, now money stops being the challenge, because again, we stop looking at problems. We don't live in problems. We have trials that we have victory over. And the other thing is that when you actually really start to understand the difference between good debt and bad debt, like that's where things shift, because in business, you have investments. I don't like in getting better. In bettering myself, it's nothing but an investment. It's everything but an investment. It is an investment. It is an investment. So, like, at the end of the day, here's the thing that a lot of people don't even realize either, that if you're doing continued education to better yourself, if you're an employee, you're lowering your taxes and actually getting a tax deductible that you're probably going to receive money back for. Okay, so that investment stopped. Actually, you're getting better. So just getting better in and of itself, was that not amazing amounts of value? Okay, now you're getting money back. Okay, but if you're already an entrepreneur, you just lowered your taxes. Either way, like, come on. Like, this is the creativity that we have to start looking at and start understanding. And whether, like, again, we were just talking about school. Whether you can go spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to school, or are you going to hone in on, looks like my hold on, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it sounds a little weird.
Is it back?
Now it's back.
Okay.
It's like you went down the log ride and got water splashed all over you, and we actually saw you for the first time.
We're back.
Dang, 10-2.
So again, like just honing in on what skill sets and investments are. The biggest principle, we got to start tying this up, but the biggest principle that you should look to as you want to see more value in yourself is how much value are you bringing to the world around you. There's nothing like healing a broken heart by going to go serve somebody, going to find the things that break your heart, the things that are actually breaking your heart. That's the purpose. Your pain is not a punishment. It's a platform for purpose. So if you got a broken heart in something, the easiest way to mend it is to go serve in the area that is broken. Super simple, because you're not the only one. It's easy to fall into selfishness instead of selflessness. So that's a big thing. And then really understanding that the bigger the problem, the bigger the payoff, the bigger the solution, the bigger the salary. So, I mean, for us in the world today, our biggest tagline and focus is we want to help drive more impact and income in the world so that our brothers and sisters, image bearers around us, can do more of the things they love with the people they love most. God is a God of unity. We want to press families together, right? And so the easiest way to do that is to help them with skill sets in our current economy as things are going through the roof. And I've never seen groceries be what they are, man. The amount that you have to pay for 2 bags of groceries right now, you used to be able to get 2 carts in the 80s, right? So like, this is real.
Yeah.
So we're here to help.
I love
Now,
that.
to kind of drive it home with motivation versus discipline, lots of people are motivated to listen to the podcast. Ours, other people's. A lot of people are motivated to get the person's book. We'll have one soon. Right? They're motivated to start going into the very first things and listening and starting to dream about what they want. But very few people are disciplined enough to be able to go see it through and give that commitment, which is pretty much synonymous with discipline, to go through and actually fight for what they want. Unsuccessful people make decisions based on where they are, and successful people make decisions on where they want to go, right? And where you want to go, I assure you, probably needs quite a bit of discipline. So I encourage you to not just be motivated right now, but to take the next steps with us. If you're listening in, we do want to connect with you at some point. So probably the easiest way, Zach, is it still to get onto the website?
Correct.
Go to prosperitymovement.online. Really easy, prosperitymovement.online. And there are a bunch of different yellow buttons that says sign up and talk with us, right? It's the easiest way to be able to connect with us. If you've already signed up with us and you get emails and text messages and such, you can go ahead and respond to any of those, and we will be reaching back out to you so we can actually get you from the motivated part to the disciplined part. Anything else, guys?
Nope, that's perfect. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Adios.
Take care.
Awesome. Cheers.